want to thank the League of Women Voters for organizing this. It's important for you to come and listen. And finally, let me thank you for coming to listen. And let me tell you how much I appreciate you being here. The university is a place where ideas should be exchanged, where discussion should happen. And for us, one of our goals has been to make this university a place where folks from off campus can come onto campus and do exactly what you're doing tonight. So we're thrilled with the opportunity to be able to show you what a beautiful campus we have, and thrilled with the opportunity to be part of what is an important forum this evening. So let's get on with the forum, and I'll turn it over, please, to Ms. Mary Berry, who's going to be the moderator tonight and make the introductions. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Shealy. Good evening to all of you here, and welcome to the forum for the candidates of California's 10th Congressional District, sponsored by California State University, Stanislaus. I'm Marie Berry from the League of Women Voters of Stanislaus County, and I'm going to be the moderator for this evening. As a courtesy to our candidates, as well as to your fellow audience members, if you wouldn't mind turning off your cell phones or in some other way preventing any sort of interruption to the flow this evening, that would be appreciated. The purpose of tonight's forum is to provide an objective setting where voters, such as yourselves, here in the audience, and those who may be accessing this from the university's website, can hear from each of the candidates. The League of Women Voters does not support or oppose candidates nor their parties, so the views that you hear this evening will be from the candidates and their own. Let me introduce tonight's candidates for the California's 10th Congressional District, who will be on the November ballot. Jeff Denham. Hernandez. Let's let that be the last show of approval or disapproval for the evening, so that each of the candidates has as much time as they can to respond without having a cheering section. Let me go over the procedures for this evening. As Mr. Denham pointed out, we do follow the rules pretty closely. Students have had an opportunity to submit some questions on their website, and members of the audience will also have an opportunity to submit questions that have on cards that are provided here. League members will come up. Any question that you create should be addressed to both candidates and should cover an issue. It should be a question that both candidates can answer. The questions will be presented to each of them so that they can present their views on the issues that you have asked about. In order to have as many questions as possible on as many different issues, we have question sorters from the League who will consolidate them in order to avoid any kind of duplication. The format will be as follows. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to begin their opening statement. Then we'll have the question period, and each candidate will have 1.5 minutes to answer the question that is asked. And we'll alternate between who is the first responder and who is the second responder. After the question period, each candidate will have 1 minute for a closing statement. We have volunteer timers who will signal during those statements and during the answers when you have 30 seconds left for your response. And then there'll be a stop. And we ask that there be, if you're in the middle of the sentence, you can certainly finish that to the next period, but then we do ask that you stop. And we also ask that there be no demonstrations of opposition or support to the candidates or their positions. This will allow us the full time to hear from both of the candidates. Now, selected by law straws, Mr. Hernandez will be opening, and then followed by Mr. Denham, and then we'll go back and forth in terms of any questions. So, Mr. Hernandez, are you ready for to introduce yourself to us?
I am. Good evening. My name is Jose Hernandez. I'm a Valdez native, and a lot of folks always ask me why I decided to run kid, I was watching Apollo 17 and told shared the dream with my parents that I wanted to be an astronaut. My dad said I can do that if I work hard and got a good education. Fast forward today, I come back to the Valley and I find it completely transformed. In 2010, at the peak of the mortgage foreclosure crisis, with the Valley being the epicenter of it, unemployment twice the national average, yet no one was doing anything about it. So I decided to throw my hat in the ring and promise to focus on core things. That's jobs, 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 and education. And as a candidate and as your congressman, that's what I'm going to be working on.
Thank you.
Well, thank you and good afternoon. It's good to be home. I'm a Turlock resident, local farmer. And first let me start by thanking the league for once again holding another debate, for Stanislaus State and all the students here for allowing us the opportunity to come together here. I've represented this area for 8 years in the state senate, now a year and a half, coming up on 2 years in Congress. And I'm very proud about the amount of support we've received throughout the community. Republicans, Democrats, Independents coming together. The mayor, John Lazar, and Councilman Dave Lopez, both Democrats. All 5 supervisors, Vito Chiesa, our Republican supervisor here. Republicans and Democrats coming together to fight for the Valley. That's what you've gotten from me over the last 8 years in the Senate, 2 years now in Congress. We've got to have a Valley delegation that works together. Jim Costa, Dennis Cardoza, and I, working on bills with Jerry McNerney, and even over the hill, Sam Farr and I coming together on different issues to be able to solve the Valley's problems. There's no place to have the partisanship here in the Valley, to fight for the Valley's needs, to fight for the high employment levels, to get the jobs here. We've got to be able to come together as a bipartisan coalition. Also proud to have the Turlock Chamber's endorsement. The Chamber knows how important these jobs are to our local economy. And that's why Dennis Cardoza and I, every time the president has come to the great state of California, we've encouraged him to come to the Valley. Because the Valley is the size of most states. And we've got big problems here. And it's going to take bipartisan leadership to be able to solve those problems.
Thank you. With those introductory statements, now we're ready to begin the questioning period. And the first question will have Mr. Denham be the first responder. Agriculture is the backbone of the Valley. Would you outline your agricultural policy, including water, soil conservation and preservation, federal subsidies, and trade policies? In a minute and a half. Having said that, is there somewhere we can go to get more information on your agricultural policies? In a minute and a half of response.
Absolutely. Both on my federal congressional website as well as my campaign website, it details out the types of policies that we're going to continue to push forward. We did something different this last year. We came together, again, Republicans and Democrats from the Valley, came together on a water proposal. Now, I can tell you that I didn't like everything in there, neither did Jim Costa, but yet we came together and both supported H.R. 1837 that would deal with not only more water conveyance, but most importantly, more water storage. We need 5 to 6 million new acre feet of water. We have 5 projects ready to go. A 6th project, the Exchequer Dam, will create 70,000 new acre feet. But between all 6 of those projects and 2 different bills, it'll give us greater water supply. And without water, we will not succeed here in the Valley, not our agriculture industry or any other industry without that lifeblood.
Now, would you repeat the question?
No, I think I got it. There's no question that agriculture is the backbone of our economy here, and we should do everything in our power to make the farmers successful because they provide the jobs. And we are the breadbasket of America, and we have to make sure that farmers are successful. You have my commitment that I'm going to serve, I'm going to ask to serve on the Agriculture Committee to make sure that we're well represented there. Water is a very complex issue, and we got to make sure that we first take care of our farmers. Now, my opponent here talks about working together and working in the center of the table and across the table. You got my commitment that I'm going to do that. He's had 2 years of doing it. He's done a lot of talking, but I haven't seen any results. They can't even get a farm bill passed. So you've got my commitment that I'm going to be working hard and making sure that we pass the legislation that's needed to make our farmers successful.
Thank you. Question number 2. and you will be the first responder, Mr. Hernandez. This one deals with Pell Grants. The federal Pell Grant program provides need-based grants to low-income students who are pursuing an undergraduate degree, and many students at CSU Stanislaus rely on those Pell Grants in order to afford a college education. Over the past 2 years, Congress has discussed serious cuts in this program in an effort to address federal spending. Do you believe that the Pell Grant program is a worthy federal investment?
As a benefactor of the Pell Grant, I absolutely think it's a very necessary grant program to help our kids get a great college education. These days, our kids are graduating college with so much debt, it's hard for them to get a good start in life. The Pell Grant at $5,500 a year has been roughly at the same rate as it has for many years. And here my opponent here, Congressman Denham, has voted for the Ryan budget at every opportunity he has. You know what the Ryan budget calls for? 45% cut in Pell Grants. I'm not going to stand for that. I'm going to stand for education. I'm going to work for you guys. I have 5 kids. I got 5 college tuitions staring in my face. So I know the real world of what a college tuition it costs. Because I just paid my first tuition check to the University of Pacific for my oldest kid. So thank you.
Thank you, and again, may I remind our audience that we appreciate having no responses to their positions, so that each one can have a fair time opportunity to address that. Mr.
All Ryan budget, Medicare, what was the question?
Pell Grants.
Pell Grants, yes. Well, first of all, we actually passed on a bipartisan level the Protecting Academic Freedom Act. It was something that went through on bipartisanship, which in Washington, D.C. is hard to do. We also fully funded Pell Grants. It came as a great debate. There certainly were a number of other trade-offs, but we came together and supported that on a bipartisan level, fully funding current Pell Grants. We also came together on student loans. If you remember, not too long ago, they were going to let the student loans expire. 3.4% was going to go to 6.4%. We extended those because those student loans that helped me get through college. I paid my own way through college, went to junior college first, and then later went on to Cal Poly San Luis Obispo. Those were very important things to me. But let me address one other issue while we're talking about education. I don't believe that K through 12 should be federally funded. We ought to block grant it back to the state. About 10% of our education funding comes from the federal government. Rather than the federal government dictating to California what's going to happen with our K through 12 system, we ought to block grant back to the state so we have more teachers in the classroom and greater funding on a local level. So as parents, we can make decisions for our kids' schools.
Thank you. And for the next question, you will be the first responder. What specific recommendations would you support to reform the U.S. tax system?
Well, this is something that is going to be an election year issue. It's something we're going to be dealing with as soon as we get back. Certainly, you've heard a lot about the taxes that would expire, everything that would affect our farms. The estate tax would go to 55 to 60%. So it means if your parents passed away, that farm would then not only get divided up between family members, but the bulk of that would go to the federal government. So I think that we need to solve this issue with the estate tax, but most importantly, I think that we've got to address the overall tax code. We need to have a fair system. We need to have something that is across the board that allows us to know exactly what you're paying, whether it's as a business or as a homeowner. You ought to have a very simple way to pay this. My fundamental belief in a fair tax, if you make 10 times more than I do, you ought to pay 10 times more in taxes. But we shouldn't have these huge tiered rates with all of these different loopholes. Let's get rid of the loopholes and create a fair system for everybody.
Thank you. Mr. Hernandez?
Yes, you know, with the Bush taxes, there's no doubt that we've gotten ourselves in a predicament, which is why the U.S. economy is partly in the position that we're at right now. We've got to figure out a way of bringing more income into the U.S. Treasury, and so one of the things that we have to do is everybody has to pay their fair share of taxes. And so one of the things that I am a great proponent of, I think there's something wrong when we say we're going to extend the push tax cuts, and someone making over $3 million gets an additional $250,000 tax cut. I think there's something wrong with it. I think there's something wrong when they're paying a lower tax rate than a middle-class person. So I think it's time that we have everybody pay their fair share of taxes. So part of that tax reform is to make sure that the millionaires pay their fair share of taxes, and that's what I'm going to be fighting for. I don't want our country to just recover solely on the back of the middle-income families. Everybody has to pay their fair share of taxes.
Thank you. The next question, and again, Mr. Hernandez will be the first responder. Please provide details of your plans to deal with Medicare and Social Security. Will you be releasing a plan to deal with Medicare and Social Security to the public?
Absolutely. You know, Medicare is a great program. It's a program where seniors have paid into it all their life, and they have this expectation that they're going to be taken care of with respect to accessible Medicare. What the Ryan budget does is does away with Medicare as we know it. It creates a voucher care program that does not keep up with Medicaid, with the cost of health care. You know, Medicare is not perfect, but there's ways of fixing it. But we can't dismantle it completely, because if we do, we're going to basically be shifting the cost of health care to the seniors over time, because we know that the voucher program is not going to keep up with the cost of health care.
Thank you. Mr. Miller?
Well, first of all, you know, there's been a lot of talk about the Paul Ryan plan. I look forward to senior plan, but keep in mind that people are actually voting today in Stockton, and in 8 days, absentee ballots will go out. So I hope you'll actually put an emphasis on getting that information out, because I think people deserve the right to know. We have to have a transparent system so we can actually debate these policies, but you know what? I do have a record to run on. And I'm proud that I've supported a budget that deals with Medicare. I look forward to the other side coming up with one. If both parties can realize that it's broke, if both houses realize it's broke, and the president understands that in just a few more years, Medicare is going to be completely insolvent, then both parties, including the president, should have a plan. But just to letting it expire is something that will devastate all of our seniors. And I think for every student that's here, you know, I'm under 55, but I've been paying into a system. We ought to make sure that there's a system out there. So that bipartisan agreement, bipartisan for the 2013 budget that Paul Ryan and Senator Wyden came up with actually deals with it like Medicare Part D, so that you have a choice. So it's a premium support system that if you want to use Kaiser, if you want to use Blue Shield, you have the opportunity to do that. But if you want to stay with Medicare or Medigap or Medicare Advantage, you can do that too. And by the way, if you pick a cheaper plan, you get to keep the money that's left over. That's an issue that everybody should support. Yeah.
Thank you. Next question. And Mr. Denham will be the first responder on this one. Unemployment in this area is higher than the national and California average, and historically has been that even when the economy is strong. What specifically do you think can be done to bring jobs to this area?
Well, I think one big issue we're going to be addressing is taxes. Just raising taxes on the 96% of the small business owners by raising the $250,000 and above tax will not solve our job crisis. In fact, it'll make it worse. So I don't believe that we should be extending the tax increases, but let me take it a step further. So we had a chance to vote on this, and it actually failed 0 to 414 in the House and 0 to 99 in the Senate. So not even Nancy Pelosi, your biggest supporter, would support this. So increasing taxes is something that will continue to drive up the unemployment here. What we need is real solutions, and water supply is one of those. Making sure that we've got water storage for future generations and keeping our agriculture industry whole. We also need to look at a whole host of regulations that make us uncompetitive here. And I think the biggest issue here locally will be, outside of water, will be energy. We need to become an energy independent nation. We need to utilize not only our solar here locally. We've got some of the most expansive solar technology, but wind, biomass. Hydro ought to be considered a green energy here in California. It's the greenest energy there is. But we also ought to look at oil and natural gas. We're going to continue to pay higher labor rates than China and Mexico, but we can be competitive again if we actually lower our energy costs and make our nation competitive. competitiveness.
Thank you. Yeah, Mr. Hernandez?
Yes, thank you. Well, I still didn't hear how jobs are going to be created specifically here in the district, so let me tell you that. But before that, what I want to tell you is that, you know, given our current economic situation, you know, we're not going to tax our way out of it, and we're not going to spend our way out of it. It's going to be a combination of both to get us out of this situation. One of the things that I'm proposing is that what we need to do is we need to work together at the center of the table, across the table, and work at all levels of government, from the congressional to from the federal to the state to the county to the municipal governments. Together, set up a 3 congressional district, one to the north, McNerney to the north, and to the south as well, so that we can set up some type of enterprise zone to create the tax incentives to attract the high-tech sector manufacturing industry over to the valley. You know, we've been giving a lot of tax incentives for companies to go overseas and to Mexico and set up shop there. I think that's wrong. I think we need to set up the incentives so that they stay here and create jobs here in America. We also need to work with higher education systems to make sure our kids grow up here and are eligible for those higher paying jobs.
Thank you. Next question, Mr. Hernandez, you will be our first response. Do you support the high-speed rail system for California, and how will you address its impact on farmers?
Absolutely. You know, earlier I said that the agriculture is the backbone of our industry, and one of the things we have to do is we have to support our agriculture to make sure we're able to get, they're able to grow, they're able to get the produce and food to market in a quicker pace. One of the things that we can do is with the high-speed rail project, what the nice benefit of that is it's going to take cars away from the freeways. You're going to be able to move people in masses and be able to free up the highways for the produce trucks and everything agricultural to prosper even more. And the side benefit of that also is that you're going to have cleaner air. We all know that the valley suffers from a lot of smog in here, and by getting cars out of the freeways, using high-speed rail, we're going to be able to prosper better and have a better quality of life here in the valley.
Thank you. Mr. Denham?
We just got to get real with some of these projects. I mean, this was something that I supported in the state senate, was a $9.95 billion bond. Now our credit rating in California is at an all-time low, and the project, instead of being a $33 billion project, is now a $98 billion project. Where does that money come from? Who are you going to tax to be able to come up with that? And who's going to pay the ongoing debt? What are the ridership numbers? There hasn't been a study that's been able to show you the ridership numbers, and most importantly, there's not a private investor that's going to be on the hook for this. So even if you came up with $100 million, are we going to pay an ongoing subsidy like we do with Amtrak? It's $1 billion a year. Is there going to be a private individual that's going to take this on, or is this going to be another government-run bureaucracy? It's something we can't afford. I'm adamantly opposed to it now, especially now that they've changed the route and they're going to cut right through the middle of our ag land. If agriculture is our #1 industry here, then we ought to start supporting it.
Thank you. Thank you. The next question, Mr. Denham, first response. Which federal government programs would you cut? Please be specific.
I'll be very specific. The first one I cut is GSA. I abolish the agency altogether. I chair the committee as a freshman in economic development, FEMA, emergency management, and public buildings. GSA has been using our tax dollars to go on vacations to Las Vegas, $1 million, just a recent one in Louisiana, New Orleans. We can't afford it. And if the president's going to issue an executive order on this like he did, then the bureaucracy ought to follow it. So if GSA is going to ignore the president, we ought to abolish the agency altogether. Redevelop our buildings, get rid of the things that we don't need, get rid of this waste in our public buildings, and get rid of the huge amount of taxpayer dollars that goes to upkeep all of these billions and billions of dollars in upkeep of all these different buildings. And in the process, not only should we sell the buildings off and lower our debt, but we can redevelop a number of these buildings and actually create jobs in the process. So here's an opportunity that not only do we save hundreds of billions by abolishing an agency and letting private individuals take on that task, but we can actually create jobs in the process. So I've been proud as a freshman and a committee chairman to actually work on a bipartisan level with the president and the administration on something that will be meaningful to our nation.
Thank you. And Mr. Hernandez?
Well, Mr. Congressman, it's interesting that you criticize folks going on vacations and paying extravagant hotel bills. When we've heard, we saw reports that you paid over $1,000 in hotel bills.
The question has to do with which programs you would cut.
With over $1,000 in the hotel bills to go on TV to talk about waste. I find that quite interesting. Nonetheless, the areas that I would look at in terms of cutting for the federal government, we have a war going on in Afghanistan that we need to wrap up and bring home. We need to cancel a lot of those government contracts because they are very expensive. We also need to look within the infrastructure of government. For example, our automobile fleet. If you cut that 25% over a period of 10 years, you can save over $5 billion. I know that's not a lot in the grand scheme of things, but you have to look at areas like that to be able to save the money and to be able to run more efficient as a federal government.
Thank you. This is question number 8, and Mr. Hernandez, you'll be the first to give a response. Do you feel the Citizens United ruling should be reversed with legislation? How should campaign spending be reformed?
I think that anytime people can give money and not be able to identify themselves is wrong. And so what I'm for is that people should be able to give money for a political cause because this is America and they're free to do whatever they want to, but darn it, they should identify themselves and tell us who they are.
Thank you. Mr. Denham?
I believe in transparency. I think that's the reason you see all my hotel rooms when I'm traveling around trying to cut waste in government. But we're dealing with transparency. While you want to raise taxes, you ought to address the 2 years of taxes that you didn't pay. And not just taxes, but payroll taxes.
Again, would you address the question of Citizens United?
We have high unemployment here in this area, but when you're a business owner and you fail to pay the most simplest of taxes, the unemployment
Not
tax,
answering the question.
those are affecting real lives of people that are actually out there in unemployment. So you ought to start by paying your taxes before you want to tax everybody else.
Could you address the question, please? Citizens United ruling, should it be reversed?
No.
Thank you.
A long time.
The next question is for you. What is your position on women's reproductive rights? I'm sorry, what is your position on women's reproductive rights? Starting with Mr. Denham.
I am pro-life. I've always been pro-life, but I was very honored this year to receive the Working Mother Magazine's Best of Congress 2012, which, there's a lot of partisanship that's happening in Washington, D.C., but when you can get an award by Working Mother Magazine that gives an award to Debbie Wasserman Schultz, she and I are not on the same ideological standpoint when she chairs the DNC. So I'm very proud that not only did I receive that, but it's co-chaired by Ariana Huffington. So it's not the most conservative group, but it shows that my voting record stands up with working women.
And the question again, what is your position on women's reproductive rights?
I believe a woman should have the right to make the decision with respect to her health.
And the next question will be yours to start. What will you do to support veterans and the veteran issues?
We're having a lot of veterans come home, and we've heard a lot about the trauma disorders that they have as they come home from war. And I don't think we do enough to ensure that the veterans successfully integrate themselves back into society. I think we ought to create programs so that we can help them